Hey, what's up YouTube? Benaris here with another episode of Teamworks where we take an analytical look at 2v2, 3v3, whatever we come across, and hopefully come out a better player. So, today's game is going to feature myself spawning as the purple Protoss in the top left. My teammate is Magus FTW. We have Edward Zal, the red Terran, and finally Rotface, the blue Protoss. Now, I want to point out something right off the bat. I'm going to pause it here really quick and look at the chat. You see how we've already had a whole bunch of spam from this Edward Zal guy. This is going to be a recurring theme throughout this video, and this is one of the major points that I want to touch on today. Dealing with psychological pressure in the early game with cheese. This is something that can be very, very difficult for a lot of players. Now, unless you're a seasoned veteran with the attentiveness level required, you know, this is probably something you've encountered once or twice before. It's thrown you off your game. You end up messing up because you're just so frustrated with that guy saying things like, GG, leave please queer, etc., etc., etc. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty rude stuff. That's the point. He's doing this. It's at its basic level, most basic level, it's psychological warfare. It's just another attempt to cause you to be at a little bit of a disadvantage, so that way when they push, they'll be that much better off. So, we're going to be observing the troop movements, the build orders here. We see Edward Zal deciding to go ahead and finish up his depot at the top of the ramp. So he may be trying to wall off here. And of course, Magus FTW, he's getting himself a little bit caught up, but that's okay because that's all right. Really, here's the thing. I personally don't like talking back and stuff like this because I find it to be very distracting. Myself, I'm not a pro gamer. I only have so much APM. I think when I 1v1, my peak APM is about 94 or so. That's my last couple of replays, what it's about averaged out at. I don't really like sitting there and chatting a whole bunch. So I find that it can be just kind of distracting to even read it, so I don't read, I don't even pay attention to this part of the screen. So, whatever. Leave it there. See if you can do that. If you need to, watch the video again and just see how long you can ignore this stuff here. So we see that Edward Zal is dropping a proxy barracks outside of our base, and this is obviously indicative of some type of cheese play. Now he is getting gas, which means that we're probably going to be seeing some Marauders here very soon. And of course Rotface throwing down his first gateway there, Cybernetics Core going down as well. Now I want to bring attention to the timings of these things. Look here and see. I decided to go with a 4-gate build as an opener. We were talking about it, and why, excuse me, I had a cough. We were talking about it, and we decided, you know what, we'll go for some 4-gate harass, that'll be fine. Now, I really don't know too many 4-gate builds. I just know the one that's an all-in. I mean, again, I don't really like doing them that much, so I don't know all the variants. But I decided I would try to improvise a little bit. And of course, this is where we kind of got the idea, oh, hey, look at that. By spotting this proxy pylon right here, which we'll check out in just a moment or two, then maybe, we'll be facing some early pressure there. So, of course, Magus checks that out, sees that pylon. But the biggest thing is, and this is a very smart move by Edward, he kept a Marine here at the watchtower, so that way if we came and claimed it, we wouldn't be able to see it. I mean, you can take a look right here. Bam! Didn't see that. Didn't see that. We have no idea what's coming. All we know is that there's no barracks up here. Rotface, of course, has his first Stalker on the way, working on 3 additional gateways. Second one just finished. And lo and behold, we look at the warp gate timings, and we see, oh look, problem, sir. Doing that 4-gate, going to get him a little bit ahead there. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, ho, ho, look at me. But I'm saying that this build just happens to lead me into being in a good position. But you're going to see it's kind of weird. I have to more or less transition into a longer-term game plan. Because let's look here for just a second and see what I'm talking about. We see a forge just went down for Rotface. He's still running on 1 geyser, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to really afford the extra upgrades and, of course, getting the Stalkers out to match both of our production. Seeing down here, Magus has 3 gateways. The second or third one is just about halfway there, and they are just now starting to work on the rocks at 520. So my warp gate should be done in about 10 game seconds at 530, and I'll be in a pretty good position position to get some units out. But you see how I've dropped this gas here, and that's because I want to try to transition out of this 4-gate as soon as possible. The 4-gate, as I've said before, is not a build that you want to be stuck in the mid to late stages of the game. So this gas, fortunately, you'll see later on, comes in great handy for me. Is that even proper grammar? I don't know. Either way, it helps me out a ton. So now we see these rocks are going down, and they're still chatting it up. Now we take a look now that it's around 5:48, and we can see there is just so much stuff. This is what I'm talking about. It can be pretty difficult to ignore all of this. And side note, easy stands for easy and Edward Zhao. I noticed that when when I was watching the replay afterwards. So Magus scouts out the rocks are going down, so a little bit of a panic moment there, but this is the most important part. You've got to keep your cool, stay collected. Let's pause and look at the unit comparison real quick. 24 probes to 19. Between me and the Protoss. 5 Stalkers, 1 Zealot to 4 Stalkers. So there's a little bit of an advantage we have there. You see my army units at the top. Now, my other Protoss partner, you see he's got 1 Stalker, 1 Zealot. He's warping in 3 Zealots right now, which is a very good choice at this point. We already have a lot of Stalkers. And looking down here, we can tell just from the shots, we can tell that there's a bunch of Marauders. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Bam! You saw we got an idea. There's about 3 or 4 or so. And so now here comes the engagement. Now let's take a look at the income while all this goes on. We see 24, 22, 19, 18. So there's a little bit beneath us. So we've got to make sure that we can pretty much just do as much damage as possible without, and this is the key part, without suffering equal losses. So you see I've lost 1 Stalker there. And at this point, I'm just like, oh crap, I've got to run up. So we'll take a look at the army size. I'll just let you keep an eye on that while we engage here as I continue to kite back towards my base where I'll be able to warp in some units and just a minute. Now let's take a look at the unit composition here and see kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing. The reason I'm cutting back like this is because I know I'm not going to be able to engage this. Plus with the Zealots here, I need to take those out as soon as possible. I'm going to be warping in some Zealots or some Stalkers here in just a minute, and this is going to give me the advantage that I need to push back, which is very important. I want to try to target this Marauder, get him down. You see they got that early stem, so I know they're going to be more or less not quite all inning here, but their infantry are going to be very weak, very fast. We take a look at this Marine, and it's also very low. So also Magus here is trying to intercept. This is exactly what he should be doing. He's trying to keep these forces away from regrouping with the big bulk. So now we have myself cutting back here. That's fine and dandy. Bringing back some Stalkers. And again, I realize I'm focusing a lot on my base right now, but this is pretty much where the action is at this point. Just to kind of give you a brief idea, this is how their base looks right now. And of course, down here, same thing, working on that upgrade. Head over to production tab. We see it's weapons level 1. There's that concussive shells. And again, at this point, let's take a look at the income now. Again, still staying pretty much the same, except for a few harvesters there. But notice how Terran is still keeping up. He's got the mules worked out, so that's fine. He's able to kind of cut those SCVs in favor of using them as meat shields over here. So at this point, you see we are pretty much tied up for Stalkers with Rotface between the two of us up here. That's not a good situation to be in. We really want to try to get some kind of an advantage. So notice down here how each time the Terran tries to get another force or another unit or two, we try to focus it down and then run away. The reason being is we have already pretty much demolished the Terran's army. See, he's got a couple of Marauders queued up there. But when you're facing off in an engagement like this, you need to think of your forces as kind of like a Katamari ball. You want to roll it around, trying to get too much without taking off too big of a bite and losing a bunch of stuff, having it fall off. So you want to try to hit, run, accumulate a little bit more, get the small stuff, keep running, accumulate a little bit more, keep warping in those Stalkers, warping in those Zealots, without suffering the same losses that you are imposing on your opponent. Even if it means that you take a little bit of damage on your gateway, or maybe he's working on taking off the shields on your Nexus or something like that, because you can't respond, that's fine. It's easier to come back in a game where you can warp in a superior amount of Stalkers and have a little bit of your shields gone on your gateway than it is to try to engage and basically get worn out through attrition. So here we take a look now. Let's take a look at the income. We can see here 18, 21, 26, 27. Look at the units. I now have 13 Stalkers. So this is what I'm talking about. I was able to just continue accumulating them, all the while doing little bits of damage. A Marauder here, a Marine there. Next thing you know, bam, Terran, 1 Marine. That's all he's got for this defense. And you notice something? You see how we've pretty much had the same chat here for a while? He hasn't said a thing. That's how you know you're doing it right. So we'll go ahead and unpause here. We spot this tech lab. This is a high priority target because we want to, again, deny those Marauders. Marauders are exceptionally strong versus Stalkers, which comprises the bulk of our army. Stalkers very high in mobility, which is what we need right now also. Of course, we do have a healthy amount of Zealots here kind of littered around. And this is the biggest part. This is, I mean, this isn't really the turning point, but this is a major event where all of the SCVs start dying, and you see this is where the insults really start taking hold, and this is where you know he is getting pissed off, so he is going to start playing a little bit funky-like. So looking around here, we see, okay, Rotface is about even on Stalkers. This is where we should kind of back out here. What we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have all of our Stalkers lost, and then we can't defend here. So we see, oh look, here's a pylon going down. So I brought a few more Stalkers over here. Going to be able to guard this pylon. Now, this pylon here is actually, it could be good, but it's you'll see later how it actually ends up not being so hot. The reason I say that is because you're able to warp in over here, which is great. That's exactly what you want for continued pressure. But for this kind of hit and run style, you're leaving the pylon vulnerable to attacks up here. So now I want to stop the game and go back over to the income tab and notice here, 27, 28, 23, and 7. Oh my! Terran here, he's dropping an expansion. You see, he's got this command center. What he's done is he basically did that early attack, and he needed to get his economy going very quickly, or else he would, you know, die, as he is slowly doing right now. And, yeah, so this expansion is a very risky maneuver, but it's one of desperation. So up here, this is what I was talking about earlier with that second gas. You know how I kind of got that even though I went for a 4-gate? I managed to get about 3 or 4 extra probes than my opponent. That really helped play in to get this continuous wave of Stalkers off my 4-gate. I was all of a sudden able to afford my unit composition that I needed to deal the damage that, you know, to the Marauders, etc. So now this robotics facility is going down. I'm taking advantage of my economy being superior by dropping robotics facility, Nexus, and expanding, and just kind of generally trying to build on the lead that I have. Magus down here, you see he's got a probe. He's looking to do the exact same thing, wants to go ahead and start building on this economic lead that we have. Rotface down here, you see he really doesn't have a lot that he can do at this point. All of his money is still going towards production of Stalkers, etc. And Edward Zal up here, I mean, he's pretty much just, he's just screwed. I mean, there's really not a lot he can do at this point, unless we do some sort of major fumble. So Rotface has accumulated a nice amount of Stalkers up here. That's fine and dandy. We'll head back over to the Resources Lost tab, and you can just kind of get an idea of how things look. I've lost the most resources so far, but I mean, again, really, that's not that huge of a deal. And there goes that pylon going down, and we see Robotics Facility is a little bit ahead of Rotface's as well, as he is getting Armor 1, so again, he's trying to build up on the army that he has right now. You see, he's doing a good job keeping his money nice and low. So we can see now that Terran, again, 9 Harvesters trying to build up there. I'm still continuing to build out of 2 Nexus here in just a moment. Still 1, I think, at the moment. But you look at the Units tab, you can see 7, 7, 2 compared to 7 and 1. And we pretty much at this point had just there's no real way that they can stop this particular attack. With these rocks being where they are, you know, we forced a pretty big engagement up here that caused the barracks to lift up and create a choke point, which means that there's not going to be any barracks over here or anything that can block us off, unless, of course, the Protoss decided to throw all those buildings here, in which case, all of a sudden, we get to have our Stalkers shoot at all the buildings without worrying about the Stalkers up here killing us. So, you see, now we're able to clean up, very easily dispatch the rest of the forces. There's the obligatory easy coming from my teammate. And this is something that I want to point out here. I want to point out, though you're probably thinking it's weird that I'm pausing for chat. But my point is, when people are trying to throw people off their balance with angry texts, you know, whatever, they're not actually genuinely upset. This right here is a very, very generic, meaningless response. New ball, what the fuck, you lose to idiots, etc., etc. There's no real meaning behind this, and this is more or less a GG from him. And this is his way of kind of proving my point. And I'm glad he said this, because, I mean, you can read this and you're like, oh, well, you know what? he wasn't actually being a jerk. He was just using a strategic move to try to throw me off balance. Okay, that's fine. End of story. So we were able to keep our cool here, and we see, bam, Edward Zhao has left the game. Of course, we're just kind of at this point like LOL probes. And yeah, we end up winning, and that's fine and dandy. But, you know, the biggest point, the biggest reason why I wanted to cast this game is, of course, dealing with the early pressure, you know, seeing cheese that didn't work, etc., etc. That's always fun and dandy. But to bring attention to the psychological aspect. This is something that throws off, like I've said before, a lot of players who are not seasoned veterans. So they don't have that delicious fine taste of, you know, several thousand wins and knowing the ins and outs of the game. You know, if they're a casual player, they see that kind of chat and they're like, why is that guy calling me a queer? Blah, 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 blah. I shall smite him in the name of, oh God, I forgot my fourth gateway. And there you go. That's the point of what they're doing. So whenever you're playing 1v1, team game, whatever, ignore the chat if they're trying to get your attention. If you want to chat, just chat when you have taken care of your responsibilities in game, like making sure your gateways are on time, etc. And that's going to be it for this video. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I will leave you with this awesome picture of stalkers dying an explosive death. And of course, if you do enjoy this video series, please let me know in the comments section. Let me know any tips that you have for other players. Feel free to leave those, since we're trying to build up, you know, the community here, help everybody be a better team player. And yeah, of course, if you are a regular viewer also and you haven't subscribed yet, you should do that as well, so that way you can catch the new videos as they come up. And finally, make sure you catch the recent uploads on my main channel. You can just click the link above to go straight to it. I've done some dual casts with Husky, mono battles. You can catch my perspective from those, as well as analysis of the games that we play. So, and finally, make sure you go check out Husky, because he's got a lot of cool videos. He is the Starcraft 2 casting commander. So with that being said, I will see you in the next video.